Okay, here we go. I call this meeting of the Redwood Coast Energy Authority Board of Directors to order. And first off, we're going to have Lori do the housekeeping for us.
Okay, good afternoon. This is Board Clerk Lori Taketa with some announcements. For those of you new to RCEA's meetings here at the Warfinger, the microphones are on throughout the meeting. Please speak clearly, one person at a time, and say your name when you start talking, so people online and on the phone can follow the discussion. We have no online board members today, no remote members. Community members and staff, when you are giving your staff reports, please also come to the podium so the microphone can pick up your voice. Online participants, please click the raise hand button in the webinar controls. Phone participants, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And staff asks that you raise your hand early so we don't miss you. Public comment may be limited to 3 minutes at the chair's discretion. Emailed comments are being accepted at publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org until the chair closes the public comment period for that agenda item. That's all for announcements.
All right, thank you, Lori. I'm Vice Chair Wu, and it's been a while since I ran a meeting, so everybody please feel free to chime in and go, oh, you forgot public comment, because that's probably what's going to happen. So let's see, the first thing we do is roll call.
Yes. Okay, so Director Arroyo.
Here.
Chair Scott Bauer is absent. Director Michael Garacci is absent. Director Jorgensen.
Here.
Director Ramos.
Here.
Director Scafani.
Here.
Director Schaefer. Here. Director Tuttle.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Vice Chair Wu.
Here.
There's a quorum for regular CCE visits.
Yeah. All right, and like you said, there's no directors online, right? Okay, so we can move past that. Next is reports from member entities. Does anybody here, any of the directors have anything they'd like to report out? Oh, go ahead now. Exactly.
And I just missed the last meeting because I was on Coast Guard duty, responding to the hazmat cleanup needs after the LA fire. And I was actually mostly cleaning up lithium-ion battery waste. So after the fires, the number of power walls and solar arrays that people had in their homes and in electric vehicles seemed like everybody owned an electric vehicle, and a lot of them had to be left behind in the urgency of the evacuation. So it's very interesting to do that work, and happy to share any insights from that if people are interested down the line. It was eye-opening, and it was also, it took some time and effort, but it was doable. It was just not an aspect of dispersed like household renewable energy systems that I really thought about. And so it was just very instructive. So it was good to be there, but I'm sorry to miss that.
Anybody else?
I'll go. 2 weekends ago, 2 weeks ago, I went to the Civic Well Conference that Mike was hyping up at our last meeting in Yosemite. And it was really cool. I got to spend a lot of time with a lot of CCA folks and folks from Calpine and from RCEA, and people know about what RCEA is doing in the CCA community. And it was really just cool to talk with them about what projects they're doing, about what we have going on, and just also hear a lot. There was a lot of sessions on just facing things like financing and how to get projects done in the face of the new administration, and then also just a lot of stuff about disaster preparedness and resiliency, which I know, is something big that RCEA is always working on. And so it's a really cool conference. If you ever have the chance to go, I recommend it. And so if anybody wants to hear more about it, I keep meaning I have a whole spiel I'm going to put on social media, but also feel free and reach out.
Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll move on On to oral and written communications. This is the time provided for people to address the board or submit written communications on matters that are not on the agenda. And at the conclusion, the board may respond to statements, but any requests that require board action will be set by the board for a future agenda item. So is there anybody in the public here that would like to address the board? Not seeing anybody. Is anybody online? No raised hands online. Okay. And we'll move on from that. Next up, we have a consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the board and are enacted in one motion, except for if you want to pull something, then we discuss that separately. So I'll read off, there's quite a few of them. 4.1, approved minutes of February 27th, 2025 board meeting. 4.2, approved disbursements report. 4.3, accept financial reports. 4.4, reappoint Norman Bell to the Community Advisory Committee for a 2-year term ending March 31st, 2027. 4.5, accept Community Advisory Committee 2024 annual report. 4.6, accept RCEA's 2024 Supplier Diversity Report and 2025 annual plan. 4.7, accept quarterly regulatory and legislative policy engagement report. 4.8, approve payment of California Community Choice Association annual dues up to $135,835 for fiscal year 2025-26. 4.9, hold regular RCEA board meetings with a study session on affordability, April 24th, 2025 at 3:30 at the Jefferson Community Center. And then beginning on May 22nd, 2025 at the Warfinger Building upstairs great room. And 4.10 is approved task order services agreement with Schatz Energy Research Center for programmatic research and development technical support services for $250,000 through June 2028, and authorize the executive director to execute all applicable documents. So first I'll go up to the board. Is there anybody who wants to pull any of these items? Nobody, and I'll take it out to the public. Anybody want to discuss any of these? No online, okay, great. So I'll entertain a motion to accept these.
So second.
Okay. And we can just do a all in favor of that, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next, we're going to CCE business, and I've been told we do have a quorum, so that's good. So 6.1 is weighted CCE voting, and I believe Director Arroyo asked this, not the past meeting, but I guess I've been in January. And so let's talk about this. Staff has a report. Yeah, report. Okay.
First, Executive Director. I'll provide some background on the weighted voting. You have a memo in your packets that we wrote in conjunction with our council, Nancy Dillon. So our RCEA Joint Powers Agreement establishes a partially weighted voting protocol for specifically for community choice energy business. And the state law requires that only city and county agencies can vote on CCA program business. So we did, I think last time when this was pulled, we weren't 100% confident. We've solved that mystery and confirmed that that is not something in our control, that would take a state law to change so we can vote. The partially weighted voting protocol is something we have control over. And the way it works now is that there's a pro-rata voting share with a third of the vote is a fixed equal voting share based on the number of CCA members. And then is based on the proportional share of the electricity customers in the members' jurisdiction. So again, this was not a requirement, but it was adopted after significant deliberations, and it was sort of enshrined in our Joint Powers Agreement. And that history is in the memo. It's looking to kind of get more details on that. So you mentioned this was on consent, but it's been pulled, so we want to dive into this. And as we've been kind of going through it as a staff level, we have some other things that have come up out of this that I think could be really productive to address. Again, to remove this weighted voting requirement would actually require amending our joint powers agreement. I think, as staff, we're not really recommending this option at this time. But it's certainly an option that your board can consider and give us direction on. And, this has caused us to look closer at our agendas and our voting practices and kind of what goes before the whole board and what goes just specifically to CCA, is limited to CCA business with limited voting. And we do want to stress that all board members can discuss any of the items on our agenda. So you're not limited, but a CCA board member, you're still welcome to discuss, we encourage that discussion, make your opinions known. There's no need to move the room or anything like that. And then additionally, that we do, as a matter of practice, bring all contracts before the full board, because that does impact the whole of our CCA. So some portions of it may go through CCA business initially, but once it's truly getting contracted, then it does already come before the full board. That's already in practice. And then we've given some thought to ways we may be able to reduce the impact of the weighted voting. And one simple way we could do it is to randomize the voting. So as it stands now, we kind of do this in a typically like alphabetical order, and just by chance, that kind of means that the largest entities are voting first. So by the time we get further down, the smaller entities, kind of already see how the chips have fallen. So that'd be really easy for us to just kind of randomize the voting, and if you feel like that would be helpful, we can do that. And then we also looked at our board operating guidelines just to make sure we're kind of on track with what is supposed to go before the full board and what is supposed to come specifically to CCA voting members. And so those are in the memo, but we do have some staff suggested changes we'd like to get your thoughts on and direction. And if you choose to kind of agree with us on this, we'll come back later with revisions to the board operating guidelines. And the specific things we'd like to take out of specifically CCA business and how to go before the full board are the setting of the overall CCA program objectives, determining the power content strategies and procurement strategies. And the reason that I would be recommending these come before the full board is I think they're really integral tied to our strategic plan. So kind of setting these strategies and kind of saying like, who is RCEA, these things really are important to that, and kind of the role we're going to play. And so they don't do them as strictly just CCA. So if discuss that, and if the board would like, we can certainly bring that revision back for a future decision in terms of updating the board operating. So that's all I wanted to add. And look over to I think that before.
So the only thing would be just to add to the randomized voting idea, that only would occur when there is a board member who's participating remotely, because that's the only time when a roll call vote is required. So, for example, today you don't have roll call votes, so. I suppose that could be a change if you want to always have a roll call vote on CCA business. I don't necessarily suggest that, but if you wanted to always be able to do that, you could. But otherwise, that randomized voting is a really good idea, but it's sort of in and of itself kind of random when it happens. Sort of use the term for it.
I think it came out because it just so happened we were doing roll call vote on the Diablo Canyon application the first time, and it was an observation then that going in alphabetical order could have influenced how votes were being made. So I think in the memo we outlined that this doesn't actually come up as an issue very often, and it just so happened, one of the times in my tenure here that it came up was when we were doing roll call.
I can go first. I have a question. So, does the chair have the ability to say, "Oh, I think we want to do a roll call vote on this one"? Can the chair do that? Yes. So that's a possibility. That's always a possibility.
if the chair feels like it would be, the decision would be better suited. That's very.
Well, that's something. In which case, then randomizing it. Have to do it on the fly, but. Anybody else? Natalie?
I had a couple thoughts about, and some of it is just internal process and how we facilitate our meetings. One of them is that, when things come up, particularly with non-CCA voting members of the board who have concerns, I think, we have a lot of content to cover and sometimes I think there's a lot of depth to the content that we might not be intimately familiar with, so it's kind of hard to draw out conversation. So some of it feels like an opportunity to really draw out conversation about impactful changes through whoever the chair is, and and sort of a group commitment to like make more time for that, or like really try to ensure that we're really thorough. Which I don't think we're failing to do, but it just always feels like an opportunity. And then around roll call voting, I do think there's some advantage to the time and intentionality around roll call voting, rather than there's sort of that groupthink sense of going like, oh, sure, and it's a little harder to say like, it's incumbent upon the people who are not going to vote along with the group. So I think there could be some benefit in implementing a roll call voting approach to CCA business, even if it takes just a little bit more time. It just seems like it gives everybody that extra moment to like consider their vote. So I think that's beneficial, but I also feel strongly enough about it that if the group thinks like we should just move along, it's fine.
Anybody else?
I'd just add that, I definitely support the suggestions that Beth was talking about, just to kind of get as many of those big items as possible under general business. To really kind of, I guess, tailor ourselves to not necessarily go around, what the regulations are saying, but to just, give everybody an equal opportunity to be at the table for as many of these decisions as possible. And so, the few that you listed, I would support those, and at a later date updating those guidelines to do so.
I have a question. I'm gonna just no, I'm gonna look it down, but I don't care. So when we have non-CCA voting, each member voting is like one vote, it's not weighted, right? Yeah. All right, anybody else from the board? All right, I'll take it out to the public. Here, how about online? No hands raised, so I'll bring it back up to the board. We talked about, in the board memo, well, in the package, page 88. And that's where those three, setting up overall CCA program objectives, determining power content targets, and procurement strategy and procedures. Those are the three that staff has kind of pulled out as, hey, maybe we can pull these into the non-CCA or overall. I'm not sure what the terminology is, to pull those in particular. So let's see, this is I'm looking at the actions here. We can accept, updated, and change CCE weighted board vote distribution.
Oh,
Or
yes,
not,
if
or-
I can interject.
Yeah.
On this action item. The weighted count is actually evaluated on an annual basis by our CCE staff. I don't know, I mean, if you want, if you want to continue this, or shall I? You can provide that back.
Yeah.
And when there's a change, then staff brings it forward for the board to essentially acknowledge that the weight has changed. Right? So I think that's what's happening.
Well, so like, the JPA, it's every other year.
Every other year.
So odd years, and what what we learned in getting a little deeper into this is it doesn't actually require the board to approve it. It's just that staff have to present what the new weighted voting is, or if it's unchanged. It's not an approval of that, because the process has already been set by the board. So we did change the action language, just you're accepting the report of the weighted voting in line with the JPA direction.
Okay. If you wanted to entertain what Director Arroyo has suggested, what would be that procedure? I just want to lay it out there just so we know, but.
That would be a revision to the JPA, which would,
For the roll call vote?
sorry, the weighted this vote distribution.
Which,
Is that right?
what's the change that we want to try,
Can I clarify?
Yeah,
what I was
please.
suggesting that we just implement roll call voting for CCA business, for now. Separately, I'm interested in seeing down the line if there could be some potential changes to include tribal nations, and that would be a state level change, so that would be a longer burn item, that would take some advocacy and actually thinking about how that might work. But I think that's its own item, that I'd be happy to work with partners on and just advance something, but it doesn't seem like we don't have control. So of the things we have control over, it seems like the roll call voting would be something we can implement without particular change.
Yeah, we could do that with the board operating guidelines.
I think so, yeah, I'll give a double check to the JPA, sure it doesn't conflict. Yeah.
Do other people like that idea? I don't know. I don't want to be like solely pushing for that.
I like that the chair has that option. So, I mean, yeah, it puts a little bit more responsibility on the chair. I guess in something that, for instance, like the Diablo Canyon one, you know, that would have been obvious to me sitting in here. As, oh, okay, yeah, maybe we do want to do a roll call vote on that for the exact reasons that we've been talking about. So, I mean, I can go either way, actually, Natalie. I mean, I feel like the chair is on the ball. We should be able to handle it. But it takes moments. It's not like a big kind of secret.
Well, and for when you're doing the weighted voting, there is a level of like counting that needs to take place. You know, and so I think that honestly, for Lori's sake too, that a roll call vote might be helpful in the sense that just like you can count those votes more simply and see where the numbers land. But I agree with you, Sherry, that like I think it should, just so we don't have to get all into editing the operating guidelines, to like be up to the chair's discretion. Because, you know, reflecting now back on Diablo Canyon vote, yeah, like it was confusing and it was hard to tell who was where at what time. So like when you're all throwing hands up and down, it makes a lot more sense to say, okay, let's just have a roll call vote and go through and deliberately count those votes and make it just a more clean process. But I think also without our current chair being here too, I feel a little, you know, and that's what you get when you miss meetings sometimes, but like, you know, just to get a little bit more feedback from that person that's gonna have to do that thing. But I guess, again, we change every year anyway, so.
And I think also directors can, in those times, say, hey, chair, I suggest that we do a roll call.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it's not actually just on the chair, it's on all of us.
That's a good point.
So, what do we need? Do we need a motion or is it basically info only?
Yeah, we would take a motion to accept.
Okay, what is that?
And then also, if you want to make the changes, if you want to direct staff to come back with the revisions to the items in the operating guidelines, like if you become full governing board. Under full governing consideration.
So,
Okay,
If-
those
those
things,
those
gotcha, okay,
items.
okay.
Just one comment. Molly, you said, you know, about sort of this longer burn item in terms of advocacy.
We say no to that because we're doing the policy platform later this September, so we're Redwood, so we must remember to get that one added.
And I should add that I haven't consulted with either of our. I haven't consulted with either of our general reps to see if that's like, but if there's interest in that, I'm excited.
All right, so, need a motion, yeah?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the updated and unchanged CCE weighted board
Oh,
vote
sorry.
distribution.
I can do that. Sorry, go ahead.
And also include the updates for future board operating guidelines for those 3 items listed by our ED.
Thank you. Is there a second? All right, before we vote, I had forgotten to go out to public comment, so at this time, is there any public comment? In the room? Okay, and then how about online?
The chair of the situation to do the CCE vote, did you randomize the vote or just?
Randomized, yeah. Thanks. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
Except though that.
Oh, wait a minute.
Person is non-voting.
Yeah. Jason was like, you know, Jason. So like, you know, engaged, she's ready. So, dang it.
Lori probably knows to just ignore me. Doesn't go share anyway, you know. All right. Moving on.
New CCE business of which there is none. Yeah. Okay, so moving into old business, 8.1, Repower Humboldt RCEA strategic plan update, the student staff presentations.
Kick off the presentation here. So Repower Humboldt is our RCEA's comprehensive action plan for energy. So you might also hear Repower Humboldt referred to as the Cape sometimes. And this was adopted in 2019, and you know, the goals and strategies in here really broadly include initiatives related to regional planning and coordination, integrated demand side management, low carbon transportation, and energy generation and useful services. So I think we did provide kind of an executive summary. We have some, you know, newer board members wanted to kind of hit all the bases here. I think historically we've given kind of an update on how it's going. And so, you know, I will say, you know, the team at RCEA, you know, really works every day to achieve the goals outlined in this plan. And then also to provide all the administrative support it takes to get there. So for our update today, we're really just going to touch base with each department director, and they're going to cover highlights of what they've worked on in 2024 and kind of what they're looking forward to in 25. And your handout you received also has kind of their bullet summary. We did this exercise when I first came on board, and I found that it was so helpful to sort of like hear from everybody in this rapid succession, because you really get a feel for kind of the full breadth of what we've been up to. And it was really helpful for me to kind of see it. I also want to acknowledge that all this work really happened before I showed up. So it's really a testament to the staff's like hard work, commitment. I don't get to take credit for any of it, but I still feel really proud that we accomplished so much. And so, as I mentioned, each director will give their report. So the first step is going to be Richard, the director of Human Resources. So I'll get us started.
Good afternoon, board members. A few of these items that I'll be going over are a little bit detailed down in the weeds, and I'm just going to move through them pretty quickly because we wanted to keep the time on this pretty quick. So I'm happy to just, I think I'll explain them in a way that doesn't go into detail. Then if they make you scratch your head, you can just raise questions for me. So diving right in 2024, we implemented the Renewable Energy Self-Generation Bill Credit Transfer Program, RES-BCT, as a pilot level program with the Harbor District as our lone initial participant. This is a program that's kind of like virtual net energy metering, but it allows public agencies to aggregate generation from solar or other renewable resources at one location and apply that against bills on other accounts they may have other places that are not adjacent. So like I said, kind of down in the weeds, but it's potentially a great opportunity for public agencies, including our member agencies potentially. And we are the first CCA and PG&E service territory to implement this, so that's kind of an accomplishment. Our account services team processed multiple rate changes. Every time PG&E changes their rates, we have to respond and change ours, since we're currently in the system where our rates are set relative to theirs. So that's always kind of a lift. We got out the joint rate mailer and power content label to our customers. And I will say on the account services side, you know, we've had some staff turnovers. A lot of these things have been learning experiences for new staff members, but they really rose to the occasion and handled these things and did them smoothly. And we had support from our community strategies team as well doing that. And although these things are listed here as power resources accomplishments, a lot of the things I'm talking about are really group lifts across the whole organization, getting support from other departments. We implemented the transition from the old net energy metering for folks with renewable energy generation behind the meter to the new net billing tariff for solar customers. And because that is really financially less favorable to the customers overall, it's, you know, been kind of a rough transition all over California doing that, as I'm sure you've heard. But again, our account services team really rose to the occasion and handled that really well. We completed our first year of participation in a program called Percentage of Income Payment Plan, or PIP. We have two pilot zip codes, one being the 95501 zip code in Eureka, and the other being Hoopa. And so this is basically a system where customers who are in arrears on their bills make that up in a way that's set as a percentage of their income level. And we're getting reimbursed for our participation for the hit that we're taking financially by not getting full payment from those customers. We got on the power procurement side, a lot of accomplishments. We got new contracts in place for the Drifter Energy Storage Project in Southern California, the Sandrini Energy Storage Project, which is the add-on to the Sandrini Solar Project that came online at the end of last year. So Sandrini Energy Storage is expected to be online about the end of this year. Locally, we entered a contract for Phase B of the Foster Clean Solar Plus Storage Project. That's just on the outskirts of Arcata, the Sun Valley property. And then we got into our first long-term category 3 or unbundled renewable energy procurement. So this was something that you'll recall we had come to the board about a local opportunity to do that through Humboldt Sawmill Company, and the board directed us they'd rather that we do that through emissions-free resources, and so we went out and found an opportunity for that. So that's new. We had some new projects actually make it to the finish line, like the already mentioned Sandrini Solar Project, which makes up more than a third of our total renewable customer loads. So that's really exciting. And then with help from our sister agency, Sonoma Clean Power, we were able to meet some of our resource adequacy compliance requirements through part of their Sagebrush energy storage project. Looking forward, we issued last year some new solicitations through California Community Power, the big multi CCA JPA that we participate in. We did a solicitation for what are called build transfer projects, which are basically ones where we pay a company to build the project that eventually becomes owned by CC Power rather than just contracting for the power. And we did our own local storage solicitation that launched right at the end of the year in December, and tomorrow is actually the due date for offers to come in under that. So we're excited to open the package and see what we get. We relaunched our feed-in tariff program with the board's approval, with new terms and new pricing. We started offering the bioenergy market adjusting tariff, or biomat program, that is an opportunity for us to procure bioenergy from small projects. And we're currently ramping up to do more promotion of that. We completed a multi-year compliance period for the renewable portfolio standard and successfully were in full compliance for that. So the last multi-year period ended at the end of 2024. And then we finished our first year of procuring resource adequacy under this newfangled slice of day requirement that the Public Utilities Commission has introduced, which is much trickier than the old system, but with a big assist from the Energy Authority, our consultants. We got that done with full compliance. Looking ahead to 2025, new projects coming online. We expect both phases A and B of the Foster solar plus storage project in Arcata Bottoms to be online mid-year. We have a feed-in tariff solar project, which will be our first feed-in tariff project. Expected to reach its mechanical completion, physically be done building by the end of 2025, and the actual commercial operation beginning early next year. The Sandrini storage component is supposed to be online by December. And then one of the geothermal projects that we're in contract for through California Community Power, the Fish Lake project in Nevada, is supposed to be online by the end of this year. We're at work on getting word out there and hopefully building some excitement for the new terms of the feed-in tariff program, as well as the biomat program. We're starting to talk to staff at some of your agencies about potential interest by cities, county, and in the bioenergy program. We have a bunch of new ventures that California Community Power is pursuing through their own strategic plan, including an offshore wind project in state waters in Southern California, a pooled approach to procuring our resource adequacy needs, innovative new long duration storage projects, and then those build transfer agreements that can potentially be owned jointly by the CCAs once they're built. We are taking steps towards issuing solicitation as the board approved for a study on doing cost of service rate making, which would free us from having to, jump every time PG&E tells us to on rate changes. And as you'll recall, we did that effort in 2023, Humboldt's Electric Future, where we convened some in-person and online community meetings to get input on what people would like our power portfolio to look like in the future. And we're looking forward to incorporating that community feedback into our 2025 integrated resource plan that will be due in November. These are what happens. We head over to the next part. Thank you.
You guys have questions for Richard, like while he's or do you want to just do it all? I mean, you might want to. Okay, do it all, Jen. Oh, as we go. Okay, yeah.
Okay, any questions for Richard? Other than that, you can wait.
One correction, the Fish Lake geothermal project has been postponed. It's not going to be online this year. I just got word from our yesterday. Breaking news. Sorry about that.
Okay, next.
Great, thank you. I'm Stephen Coleman. I'm the Director of Demand Side Management at RCEA. And so I will also run through a number of bullet points for you and exciting statistics from 2024 and a little bit forward to 2025. So we are, I think, the largest department of RCEA currently with 11 full-time and 1 part-time staff with a combined experience at RCEA of over 90 years. And so the people in our department have stuck around for a long time. Ben, who's over in the corner of that picture, giving a presentation on heat pumps in Arcata last year, I think started as an intern, and we're just joking. I think he's responsible for at least half of those 90 years. One of the things that we've done is we've had a local government partnership that we affectionately refer to as LGP with PG&E, and that's doing energy assessments, working with the local government agencies and hard to reach businesses. So a few statistics on that is we completed 77 energy assessments and referrals for small local businesses. And then had a number of public agency project support and management activities. Including, so there were 58 public project management activities, which are defined in many different ways, but those included working with 28 schools, 21 public agencies, and 9 tribal projects. And through that, we brought approximately $1.8 million in outside funding to Humboldt County through referrals and projects that we brought to those agencies. We also conducted residential assessments as part of our CCA program. Did 87 residential assessments. Most of those were phone-based assessments. A few of those were in person. Did a number of public outreach and education events, including a heat pump workshop. I worked with contractors on events and went to schools and a number of other things. Throughout this, we really have been trying to prioritize tribal engagement. I've been looking for more ways to help work with local area tribes, and we'll be continuing to do that. Supported local contractors, accessing both our rebate programs and other rebate programs. A lot of these statewide run rebate programs are really complicated with in-depth portals that you have to access and real specific ways to apply that a lot of our contractors wouldn't be accessing those funds if we weren't giving them technical assistance and assisting them with that. Also provided a number of just general energy advisor services for people who called and came into the office. And then one of the things that we're most known for is our equipment and heat pump rebate programs. And so we ran a number of rebates where you could apply online, on paper, call up Cam in the office and she would fill out an application for you. A lot of like real personalized customer support through those projects. So we did 91 heat pump rebates totaling $102,000 and 170 equipment rebates totaling $50,000. And then in addition to that, we also provided customers with no cost energy efficiency kits, including like light bulbs and power strips and things like that. And so we delivered 139 of those over 2024. And so for 2025, one of the things we're real excited about is launching the Northern Regional Energy Network with our partners in the Sierra Nevada and Lake and Mendocino counties. And I think I'm up to talk to you in more detail about that next, so I won't go too far into that. And then also excited to work with Beth and others to try and develop a new successor program to what we used to call the Public Agency Solar Program. And so further ways that we can assist public agencies and tribes and schools alike to access funds and manage projects, especially agencies with lower capacity. So that is my report. Any questions on that? Are we happy to try and answer?
Any questions for Steve? All right, any questions from the public here? No, no. All right, good stuff.
Hello, I'm Dana Boudreau, Director of Infrastructure Planning and Operations. Start off with transportation electrification. The California Energy Commission approved RCEA's North Coast Medium Duty, Heavy Duty, Zero Emission Vehicle Readiness Blueprint. We don't use acronyms, so we get to hear the real long version of all of our names. But I'm going to use an acronym now, making RCEA eligible for future implementation funds from the Clean Transportation Program. So this is really helpful. It's just setting us up with the plans to make sure that we get those implementation dollars when they show up. We have a regional electric vehicle charging network of 56 level 2 charging ports, and it supported over 12,000 charging sessions and delivered 160 megawatt hours in 2024. It's about a 31% growth over 2023, so really good headway. We also secured a $700,000 CEC grant to have 32 higher capacity level 2 ports at 10 community locations during 2025. And that'll increase our charging port count by about 57%. So a lot of good growth there. They're going to be a little more eccentric locations because we're trying to broaden out into the community, but it's still really essential to make sure people can charge where they want to. The team launched an e-bike voucher program for a point of sale discount focused on income qualified customers. In 2024, the program redeemed more than 30 vouchers and included collaboration with the city of Arcata to increase available funding and achieve some climate action goals. Would have done better, but the state had a real debacle on their hand launching their program, so that's getting straightened out this year. We relaunched our EV rebate program with post-purchase incentives for qualified electric vehicles. This program included new and used vehicles, eligibility for commercial and residential customers, and enhanced incentives for income qualified customers. The program incentivized 25 vehicle purchases with over 15% going to income qualified customers. We also continued our EV charger rebate program with post-purchase incentives for qualified level 2 residential EV chargers. And in 2024, we provided 12 incentives for small but meaningful numbers. The best rebate, this rebate demonstrates that we have the best uptake when we align with the EV charger rebate. We were out of sync in 2024, and we definitely took a hit on our EV chargers. So we're paying attention to that moving forward. For resilience, for the Redwood Coast Airport microgrid in 2024, the behind the meter array, or that portion which directly feeds electricity to the Coast Guard, the airport, and others, that continued to work flawlessly. And the front of the meter array, which feeds power onto the grid, achieved 100% operation. We finalized the $3 million grant through the California Office of Planning and Research for a regional resilience planning and implementation grant. Our project is to install resilient energy systems at 16 remote fire stations in the county during 2025. This is a first grant that we've received through this particular office, and fire safety has become really important. So we're extremely happy to be supporting our first responders. We secured our first grant funding through the California Clean Energy Group, another first, and used it to complete resilient energy system feasibility studies for 2 tribal elder housing facilities. And I'm pleased to report that those are moving ahead. We also surveyed the county airport facilities for potential microgrid siting opportunities, and we hope to move forward on another airport facility to do more technical assistance studies there. Finally, for reliability, we held periodic discussions with PG&E staff on transmission reliability opportunities. These are very slow moving topics. They take 7 to 10 years to build out, and having these conversations seems to take about the same amount of time. We participated in the PG&E Public Safety Power Shutoff North Coast working group as well, just to keep them informed. I did get the memo on creating these talking points, but I didn't read the part about looking ahead to 2025, so I'm going to wing it. We're going to do more of the same, and you've heard activities that we're going to be working on already. Reliability is an important topic for us. We just have really poor power up in Humboldt. So we want to start really working on fixing that. So we're going to start with educating on metrics. How is reliability measured? What is it in the first place? Related to that, we want to do more public education and outreach, just because these are really complicated topics. It takes a long time for people to be able to absorb them. So we want to get that information out so that we will have better public adoption when we come around with these crazy ideas later and want their backing. We can see what happens when you don't do that. Then resilience is really important. We want to continue to inventory of all of our critical facilities and prioritize those and get engagement with all of our member agencies to harden them. Make sure that the good stuff keeps working and bad stuff happens. So hopefully we'll be able to report out later once we get through the budget exercise. Any questions? Yes.
Now that you're talking and I'm like kind of revisiting the executive summary, I realize and this has been true for a while, that I've had a bit of a lack of clarity about how each of your umbrellas, like it seems like there's a lot of cross pollination between your next departments. I'm not fully understanding how the so under the demand side management, for example, it talks about development of community microgrids and like local backup power systems. And it sounds like that's very much in your infrastructure realm, but also in Stephen's team's realm. So how do you sort of I think I want to know like who does what more as a board member, but it's hard because is it like Steven's team was like, okay, here's the strategy, here's how we're gonna do it, and you're like, okay, here's the nuts and bolts, and Richard's like, yep, we can use that power in our portfolio, is that kind of the way to understand it, or?
Help a little bit with this. I think, because, you know, because I've had similar questions as I've come on board and starting this out. I think, you know, something that kind of, one, we can't be siloed. Like, we do have to cross pollinate. Like, we can't just like stay in our lane and not know what everyone else is doing. So it's super important, as you see, everything relates to everything. But I do think, you know, from my perspective, sometimes it's the funding source that's kind of driving a little bit of like what, you know, is the funding source or the involved. Like if we're working with a particular jurisdiction and we've already got other programs with them, it might, you know, might go into one department because of that. And then other times, you know, for example, like Steven's department is doing demand side management and then, you know, largely the local government partnership program and now NREN. So that's taking a big chunk of what they do and have less capacity to do other things. So we kind of have to move it around as needed. And I think also to say that we'll have probably even more clarity about this moving forward in the next budgets.
And I can give an example of that. There is a lot of gray and we just really have to work together and it would be really helpful for us to co-locate into one building, which I'm sure you're hearing things about, so we'll keep pushing for that. But something like a virtual power plant, you can do a couple different ways. You could go out to a bunch of residences and install batteries on those systems, and then somebody can aggregate those and call that a virtual power plant. Or RCEA could choose to go out and let's say there's a bunch of government facilities and we might offer a service that we do a government to government plan and we put a lot of facility equipment on, a lot of equipment on their facilities, and then we aggregate that and do a power purchase agreement. So they're both really virtual power plants, but one is where we own the infrastructure and own and operate it. The other one is where somebody else has an independent contract and does it. So it's tricky to decide where to slice it. But we just have to work together. And again, it depends if there's a contract that comes through, who's available and does it make the most sense. Another dividing line sometimes is it behind the customer meter or is it in front of the customer meter? But that can help a lot too.
So you're really focused on where we own the infrastructure
Yes,
or are developing it?
yes, closer.
Okay. Looks like Stephen might have something to say.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit. But I think what Dana and Beth said both makes a lot of sense. One also is just that the repower plan was written in 2017, and so there's been some adjustment. There wasn't a department called infrastructure planning when that was written, and so some of the duties have cross-pollinated. We all work really closely together and work on working closely together, if that makes any sense. And so some of the staff in DSM department and in the infrastructure department are both working on the same program on different aspects of that program. So that there really is a lot of overlap. And you know, happy to go into more details anytime any of the board members would like to ask us, but we get a lot done together, working and partnering together.
It's interesting that we have a department that wasn't featured in our plan. That's eye-opening, thank you.
We had to create it because there were plenty of things that were not getting addressed.
Yeah.
And then there was also questions of the community was the free market principles weren't working. People were not building certain things in our county that we really felt were important. So that's where RCEA took the risk to go ahead and take those on. Good.
Thank you, Dana.
Don't worry about the overlap, we just hate those people love us.
I was thinking I was gonna be a little restricted.
I'm Lori Gandini, I'm the director of business planning and finance, and this year we kind of transitioned to talking more about the behind the scenes stuff that we do, you know, to keep our CEA running as an organization. And we'll take credit for Nancy Adams' work too. And that's department. I would read this, my top bullet point is that in 2024, we developed and adopted a procurement policy and an investment policy with significant input from us. We also successfully completed a USDA loan audit. So we have a, large loan from the USDA that paid for, our microgrid or half of our microgrid. And, we had a field auditor come and park herself in my office for a week. We went through that and made it out on the other side. We also finished and presented 2 years of fiscal audits and started on audits for the subsequent 2 years. We navigated a project, projected budget deficit for the current fiscal year, that you all might remember. We, worked together to pause energy procurement goals and our new office, until we get back on track. I had the privilege of traveling with Humboldt County delegates to visit Vineyard Winds, offshore, East Coast offshore wind project off in Massachusetts. That was amazing. And we reached a cash reserve total of 30 million in 2024. Quite also awesome. My department helped applied and received a $88 million Department of Energy conditional award agreement. It's still being figured out. And $6 million in the California Energy Commission funds to build the 4 microgrids that will be owned and operated by area tribal nations that we refer to as the terrorist project. We also assisted in developing solicitations and contracts for the programs team. That's a lot of our bread and butter too. And memorandums of understandings with the NREN and terrorist partners. And then a lot of our day-to-day is just we maintain 4 bank accounts, petty cash. We track assets over $2,000. So anything that is, comes in our doors that's worth over $2,000, we keep track of. Track $4.2 million of security deposits that counterparties hold. We also track $2.6 million worth of deposit liabilities. And so that's our cash that other or that we and then some of our day-to-day for 2024 was we processed $400,000 of revenue on state contracts, over $7 million of construction delayed damages from renewable energy developers, $65,000 in revenue from RCEA's EV charging network, about $35,000 of private and local government revenue, $64 million of electricity sales. We shepherded 71 DocuSign envelopes, $51 million worth of energy related payments, almost $5 million of personnel expenses, $840,000 of facilities and operations payments, $123,000 of communications and outreach expenses, $2.4 million of professional and program services, and $232,000 for efficiency rebates, and $392,000 for net energy metering customer payouts. So that's a total of 2,252 checks that Eileen or I sign, sometimes Sarah Schaefer.
Sign a lot of checks on that.
282 ACH payments or wires to vendors and customers. Almost 950 paychecks, almost 500 credit card transactions, and 29 staff travel packets. So yeah, I also didn't get the memo about 2025 stuff, but we'll keep on doing this. And I think we're now up to a little bit more than 32,000 in our cash reserve, so that's exciting. Oh, 32 million?
Yeah.
That's better. Yeah.
Thank you, Lori. Any questions for Lori? Good job.
Okay, I'm gonna close us out. In 2024, we had 8 successful recruitments, including the executive director. We had 6 new employees and two internal promotions. My team launched the RCEA's Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. We had a very successful emergency response during the earthquake. We were in the tsunami inundation zone and had to evacuate. We hosted an in-person 3-day strategic business writing training for employees. We began working on a solicitation to move to the cost of service rate design model. The team participated in reviewing the regional climate action plan. We really increased in 2024 our engagement in the transmission planning with CAISO and this relationship building. We had some one-on-one meetings with them to represent the unique needs of Humboldt County. We moved to multi-factor authentication in our IT department, which is no small lift. And we completed a third-party security review to enable entering into the NREN contract. On our community strategies team, they successfully did a massive fire drill due to a security breach of transferring our website from an old platform to a new platform. I encourage you to look at it. It was no small feat. They did an amazing job, and it's a beautiful website. And our community strategies manager, which was one of the new hires in 2024, really has increased our public engagement and has gotten us out in front of a lot of different community groups. And I wanted to say my personal biggest accomplishment of 2024 was supporting an amazing, brilliant, hardworking team in a year of transition. So, and then what we're looking for in 2025 is getting a executed DOE funding document for the terrace project. We're going to be migrating and reorganizing our file structure storage, updating our records retention policy. We'd like to relaunch the building design to get us under one roof. We have already scheduled for May some DEI and team building training for staff. We're in the process of a third-party compensation and classification review that we're hoping to complete this year. And our community strategies team is going to be working on brand awareness, getting out in the community and seeing who knows who RCEA is and what do you think about us, so that we can better engage our public. And thank you.
Any questions? Anybody out in public? Wow, that is amazing. Anything you want to say, Beth?
Yeah, just to kind of close it out. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. You know, I think so often at these meetings, we kind of get like one little piece at like this moment in time, and it feels a little parsed out. So I know for me, it was really helpful just to kind of like hear it all. You know, when you think about like all the different programs we're offering, I hope that can kind of stay top of mind for all of you as you're engaged with constituents, and we kind of know what we're up to, and you know, help them understand that we are also a resource for them to turn to save energy. So yeah, good for me.
All right, thank you. So moving on. So it's not the rural REN anymore. Get out of that. It's the northern REN. NREN.
To the in kids. Okay, NREN. So let's have the NREN update presentation.
Not to be confused with Enron.
No, definitely not to be confused with Enron.
Still like us.
So hi, once again, I'm Stephen Coleman, I'm the Director of Demand Side Management. Not sure if she's online, but also is going to be joined by Patricia Terry, who's the Senior Portfolio Manager. And so she's the position that's gonna be really taking on the administration, the portfolio administration aspect of this project, of this endeavor. So we can move to the next. So I know many of you have heard me talk about rural REN North, and now NREN multiple times, but I thought I'd just back it up a little bit. There's probably a few new people here, and just going back to what are regional energy networks and why do they exist? So they were formed by the CPC back in 2012. The first two were created were Bay REN and SoCal REN. And really designed to fill gaps in service that weren't being offered to like the PG&E and other IOU programs and statewide programs, and to reach customers who weren't otherwise being reached. And so a few others have joined, and now there's currently, with the addition of NREN, 7 REN statewide. A big portion of the state. And so there's what we have a couple of shiny new logos. The leaf one on the front was the first, and this is our square logo, but it's one way to think of NREN is it really is a continuation of the DSM programs that we've been offering since the beginning of RCEA through various Energy Watch programs, partnerships with PG&E and the Electric Minister CCA program. And so this is the next step where we're continuing to get higher fund and bigger scope each time. And again, as a lot of you know, it was originally proposed where we originally submitted the business plan, conceived a lot earlier, but originally back in early 2022 and was approved. And that was 7 partners serving 31 counties. And I have to remind myself of that when I think of how daunting 4 partners in 17 counties is, how daunting that would have been. And there was the split between the central and northern partners. Both are now currently REN. So there's the Central California Rural Energy Network and the Northern Rural Energy Network. And like I said, we're serving 14 Sierra Nevada counties. And I've been saying all along 3 North Coast counties, but I've recently learned that Lake, not being a coastal county, prefers not to be considered one of the North Coast counties. So now it's 2 North Coast counties, Lake County and the Sierra Nevada counties. And in our last in-person meeting just last week that Beth was able to come down to and meet with the partners, we came up with this mission statement to offer energy efficiency programs for rural communities, delivering cost savings and strengthening community resilience to the North Coast, Lake County, and Sierra Nevada. And so starting off, what we're going to be launching first are programs for Humboldt County residents. And so that's continuing. And some new rebates, the equipment and heat pump rebates, induction cooking and efficient appliances. We're also continuing the no-cost assessments and energy efficiency kits, launching again, starting the phone assessments, but also moving towards more in-home assessments. And then, yes.
Through the chair, Patricia Terry is available by phone. And if you want, she's doing.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I texted her that we were coming up, and so, yeah, I'll finish up the presentation, but if there's any questions, both she and I can answer them. And we'll be doing, so in our residential programs, outreach and education. And again, like I said, this is already launched in Humboldt County, and we're working on getting it launched in the other counties as well. So you can learn more about that on the website that I was talking about. Next, we'll be launching some programs for Humboldt County businesses, and we're planning doing that more on a contractor partnership model that's called direct install, where we'll be working directly with contractors to be able to offer programs, and hopefully that will result in some higher incentives for our local businesses through, look at that, me putting an acronym right up there, through the NMEC, which is Normalized Meter Energy Consumption Data. A very complicated process where they look at your previous usage and then what your usage is after a measure was installed, so they can really determine exactly how much energy savings that created and, that, like I said, could result in higher incentives, and we'd be working with a consultant for that. But you'll see that consultant contract in one of our future meetings, I'm sure. Concentrating on heat pumps, heat pump water heating, refrigeration and lighting, and anything else that our local business and non-residential community might need. Moving on. There will also be a few other programs that will be launching under the NREN, including a workforce education and training program, a codes and standards program, help jurisdictions and contractors follow current codes and advise on reach codes if that is desired. Energy efficiency financing, so having our own in-house financing program to do microloans for all sectors and gap loans for when people get a grant but need operating expenses to actually get the project. And then just, not sure what happened with the formatting of this, but wanted to mention that we'll be continuing the local government partnership too, where we'll be working closely with area agencies. So going back a little bit to what does it mean that RCEA is the lead portfolio administrator? So in addition to implementing these programs here in Humboldt County, we're also going to be responsible for the 17 counties for compliance with all the regulations, monthly, quarterly, and annual reporting, the funds, solicitation, contracts, consultants, and we're gonna have to start preparing our business plan for 28 through 31 a little bit later this year. And this is some of the overlap with Lori's team. Like, we couldn't do all this heavy lift on this without Lori's team on most of what's right up there. So just to, again, put it in context for the 2024-2027, the total budget across the 17 counties is 33 million, 6.85 of that approximately. We're still figuring out the exact budgets, but will be allocated towards programs within Humboldt County. Another 2.7 million set aside for the portfolio administration activities I was just talking about, and 1.6 million for marketing. And so moving on to the second part of the recommended action, that we're hoping to add an additional DSM program specialist to help implement some of these programs. This person's role will be primarily focused on doing those phone assessments I was talking about under the supervision of Mike Bishop, who's shown there at an in-home assessment, looking at some blown-in installation. And it also assists with other aspects of the NREN residential services, and that position would be covered under the NREN budget. I think that is it from a, oh yeah, I just repeated the recommended action up there. And yeah, that's our other leaf logo with the electric end there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any
Happy.
questions?
I could see that. What is the lowest southern of the 14 Sierra County? Is it El Dorado?
Wow, I feel like I need to look at a map. I wasn't trying to, but maybe this is where I can I use a lifeline here, Patricia? You want the line?
Sure. Can you repeat what was asked? I couldn't really hear.
How far south does SBC's territory go? in the Sierra-
Mariposa County?
So,
I got a map
your
here.
breakdown of your finances out of the 33 million, we accounted for, roughly, 10-ish million. And the rest is going for rebates and different things, is that correct?
The remainder will be for implementation in those other counties that aren't Humboldt. So the other 16 counties.
Is that all administrative, or that's some of that is?
So no, a lot of a large portion of that would be for rebates and incentives in those other counties. So those funds will be passing through RCEA, but then distributed to those other organizations that will network in the other counties.
Question, is the 1.6 million for marketing for all 16 counties or is it just for?
That's for marketing across the entire portfolio budget.
The program specialist position, is that for the life of just this grant, or how long would that position be?
The position will be funded through this grant. It is our hope and expectation that this will be continual funding. Like Bayren and Supplier have been around since 2012 and have continued to grow and increase funding over that time. And there's every indication that this will be continued funding. In our original proposal, we had funds set aside for 28 through 31. From the whole regulatory thing, they didn't allocate those specific funds, but we have every expectation that will be funded at least through 31, given our state and federal fund. Well, it's not federal funds, so that shouldn't have any impact. So, long way of answering that. But we're pretty secure
We're like pretty sure.
that this will be continued
It's
funding.
not a temp job.
Yes. At the very least through 27, though, we have that funding through 27, so at least 3 years, but I think we'll know long before that happens, whether we have going on.
Any other questions from the board? And I'll take it out to the public. Thank you, Stephen.
Oh, is there, wait, is there there's no approve the addition of a demand side, we have an action item.
Recommended actions are on the screen.
I'll move approval of the report update and the approve the addition of the program specialists.
So. All right, great. All in favor? Aye. If you vote yes.
That's not my running gag, you know? Okay, motion passes, thank you, everybody.
Here,
All right.
now we have 12 full-time employees and.
You just want to have a bigger flex on the other part.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, we have item 9.1, the annual regulatory and legislative policy platform review and federal activity update.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna fill in for Faith on this one. She couldn't be here. She's our regulatory and legislative policy manager, so I'm gonna give you my best update here. So we have had a policy platform here at RCEA since 2022. Everything in it is really reflected in the, the strategic plan that we've been talking about. And really, it's been a great tool because before that, we needed to come to the board every time we wanted to adopt any kind of regulatory or legislative position, and that was really cumbersome and didn't really let us be responsive as quickly as we needed to be. So having the policy platform has been wonderful to kind of keep us more nimble and kind of let staff go forth and make sure we understand the board's intentions. So in your packet, you've got, the proposed platform, and then you've got a red line version of, the prior version. And so you kind of can see all the changes. It's a lot of ink on there, but I will say a lot of it's just kind of moving things around. We did try to restructure, hopefully reduce some of the redundancy and kind of make things a little more clear in the sections they ended up in. But we do have some recent events that are kind of driving the true changes that you see in there. And that is, establishment of NREN. And we should get rid of the role. Yeah, we gotta do that one too. It's hot off the presses that this is NREN. And then we have the increased distribution reform efforts at the CPUC. There was the Diablo Canyon allocation that we've added some language around nuclear storage and looking to decommission nuclear plants and increased energy affordability concerns and scrutiny of energy efficiency program funding. And then, of course, the changes in the federal administration. So these are kind of the things that were top of mind for us as we look to make changes. What do we need to add so that we have approval to kind of go forth and engage in all the spaces? But we're seeing updates and we want to make sure that we're participating. So there's 10 issue areas covered in here. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I do want to just call out some of the general themes that basically we're trying to hit as we go through each of these 10 issue areas. We really want to look at maintaining local control and preserving the ability to self-procure power resources as a CCA and also self-determine our rates and our energy programs. We'd like to see some restructuring of the electric utility sector to allow for increased government ownership of energy infrastructure and to ensure cost-effective and affordable energy services and programming, and ensure that transmission and distribution access and that we have access to reliability there, and also that we have access to the energy resources. And then to provide equitable and just economic and resilience and climate benefits to the local community, and also to maintain an efficient, transparent governance structure. So we kind of see in all of these areas that were kind of the bigger themes. You know, we see legislation going in certain ways that we might be concerned about, or policies of the CPC or CRISA that we feel, you know, could kind of lead us down a path that would be less advantageous for the work that we do. So we tried to capture all of that in the policy platform. And so there's also just like 2 procedural changes that we opted to recommend. And one is that it's been in there, I don't know if anyone exactly knows how or why it's in there, but it had a requirement to confer with the chair and vice chair anytime we're gonna like engage in a legislative position. And I would just recommend removing that because I think it just adds another layer. You know, we really hope that you can set the board's intent with this document and that we can follow it. I also wouldn't say that, you know, connecting with the chair and vice chair is particularly like increasing transparency of the decision in any way, because it's just and people are busy. And if the whole point is to kind of help us be more responsive, it just kind of adds an extra layer. So we recommend that be removed. And I think there was just one statement that this is that we provide quarterly updates. I think we generally do that, but just to be safe, we'd prefer to say periodic. I think, for example, the last update was like in October. There was another update now in the, in the consent agenda. So it just kind of gives us some flexibility to kind of bundle things together and make sure it hits the agenda when we've got something for it. So those would be the 2 procedural changes that we're recommending along these lines. And so what we're hoping for today is really, have a discussion about the policy platform, address any questions you may have, and then if you have any additions to this, and then ultimately, hopefully we'll be able to complete this today, and not more additions, so we'll bring it back for further consideration. So I'm happy to seek your direction.
Comments, questions for staff?
And I forgot to mention, I will say we did take this entire platform to the Community Advisory Committee, and their comments have been, incorporated into the draft you have.
How would the topic that we were talking about earlier fit into this in your mind, or would it need to be an addition?
Maybe it's around, we could probably, without like grabbing the exact session, I think it fits into kind of the self-governance portion of it. I really think that, would be our prerogative to be able to have who we want on the CCA board. So that's where I think it would land.
Yeah, under the category of governance and statutory and bargaining rights, so support policies that allow CCAs to engage with their customers and provide transparency in their operation. Wedge it in there. I don't know if we want to be more explicit though.
Can I suggest is 1D more appropriate? What are you suggesting?
Yeah. 1C and 1D are both kind of parts of it.
Yeah, and we could clarify, it says jurisdictions, and so we could just make it clear that, any violence or something like that. So just in case that it's involved.
You probably don't consider yourself a jurisdiction. think that sounds good, that's just.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think a big proportion of it, probably. Part of the issue is that. Some of it's, the foundational documents will come from regulations from the CPUC. Right, it's the definition of public agency. A lot of times throughout the state of California, if you look at like natural resources, public agency, when you look at the definition, tribes are listed in there. When you go to CPUC and you look at public agency, it's not sort of, I mean, you're always gonna run into that issue. We run into that issue with grants all the time. It doesn't surprise me that it's a challenge. So. Am I looking forward to, advocating for the CPUC? Not really. I mean, I don't think, from my perspective, we partnered on new things. I don't feel like I'm left out when it comes, just because it's this CCA. And honestly, I don't know how to break down. I don't have that many customers. It's customer base, right? Like, you're on that. So it's not a big issue.
I think by adding it though, it at least if it, I mean, it could be if it comes up, it's, we have the guiding document to, where we stand on that our position.
I don't want to speak for Michael as the representative of the Yarn Tribe, but it sounded like when this came up last time. It was certainly something he wanted to explore further. And if you are to have other recommendations as members of the board, I imagine. You were this one. I like the idea of adding that there, because at least there's this.
And I would agree just to, like you said, in the event that other tribes join this board, or also to like help be a point of advocacy for other parts of the state that might be going through the same things and wanting to, incorporate different, tribal entities or other government agencies into their boards, to just be on that same train with them. So, yeah, I would support adding that. And I also just want to say too that I appreciate the restructuring the electricity utility sector section.
Can I, back to this language that is in, 1D. I see that the red was added, and I'm not sure that's necessary. I mean, it certainly could be added, but I think tribes are already participating in grants. I know that, and maybe Stephen talked to this, but I know that this is looking forward to being able to use the tribes for their ability to be able to within. Is that correct? Because there's language that's being proposed to add tribes to the platform, and I just want to clarify.
I would recommend actually, instead of changing 1D, it's adding a 1E that is specific just to this issue and leaving 1D.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that the tribes, I think, already are recognized component in the REN. So
Any ratepayer is eligible for.
Oh, so in terms of program delivery, is that what we're talking about?
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I was trying to
Yeah.
confuse the question, but yes.
Do we need to come up with, from a procedural standpoint, do we need to come up with language that works on the spot so we can adopt this? Or is that something that can come back as a modification on the consent calendar for the next time if we adopt this today? Sharing that we want to make that change.
Yeah, I'd be really comfortable doing it that way to, kind of fine tune the language and just put it back on consent. If that works for all of you, but.
Also, just hearing that, like, Dr. left out the list of public agencies, so the CPUC's perspective, and that's hurting your grant capacity. I'm like, I don't mind if we push that issue, like, I don't, necessarily. Think it's the only thing we need to be advocating for, but it's certainly something we could be highlighting.
Okay. Yeah, anybody else from the tables? Did I go to the public? Comment? Okay, now it's time. Okay, so instead of approving the policy platform, we have direction to staff to make those changes and bring it back on probably the consent calendar. There it is. Moving on, 9.2, update, offshore wind.
Hey, you've learned a lot from me today. Thanks for listening. So, this is really, bringing to the board, one of the things when I was hired was sort of like on the plate was sort of reestablish RCEA's place in the offshore wind space locally. So I kind of want to go through, how this starts in just a really brief version of the very long history, and then kind of talk through some options and, how we could be involved. And then what I'm looking to do is hear from all of you, take some direction, and then really build that into the budget program for next fiscal year. So we kind of have a sense of what you're looking for and how much resources we're do we need to find funding, or do we have funding? So that will, your input will drive those decisions moving forward, and you will see it come back to, this is really, this item is for direction, no formal vote required, but then the vote will come at the budget level. So we do in our strategic plan, we have this, there's several items that I think are in the staff report, but this is really the one that sticks out to me, that we have this strategy to work with public and private entities to develop offshore wind energy on our coast and support establishing Humboldt Bay as the West Coast hub for offshore wind industry. So I think, early on from about 2017 through 2022, RCEA really had a big leadership role. For those who are on the board, if you remember, it was really instrumental in spurring the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to really do these area auctions that we saw. There was a developer team that RCEA was participating with and partnering with, however, we weren't the successful bidder. And that's kind of, when I think maybe sort of the really robust involvement stop. Not to say that we haven't been doing anything since that time, but we've been participating in working groups locally, kind of going to all kinds of different meetings, commenting when necessary in terms of as different environmental reviews and process and planning documents come forward. But we haven't really been front and center in this space. I would say probably for the last couple of years. So next slide. So I have been kind of talking with staff, talking with, this went to the community advisory committee, and also interviewing some other entities that are working in this space. And really my question has been, where could we fit? What are the needs? How do we not be redundant from things that others are doing? And how do we stay within, what our strategic planning goals are to see or to do? So one thing that is probably top of everyone's mind is just this sort of never-ending immense need for public education and outreach. There is so much. I was talking with some folks the other day, and we were wondering how many minutes a day does the average Humboldt resident spend thinking about offshore wind? And I would guess that everyone in this room is a terrible test case, and that we're probably on the high end of that. But it's it's this big thing that could potentially come, and how much does really the general public know about it, and could we play a role in helping to understand that? And I think the types of things that our community would look for RCEA to do in this space would really be tell the story of why wind. Why does it fit within our CEA goals? Why does it fit within the state's broader strategy to rely more on renewables and get off greenhouse gases? So looking at that, I think that could be a really great space for us to fill in. It's kind of that bigger background discussion. Also discussions and education around just how does our energy infrastructure work? I think that's something that keeps coming up for the folks that are doing outreach. It's where do you even start? How do you get the same baseline knowledge for everybody so we're all speaking the same language? And then also, I think to be a convener, there's been requests for us could we host workshops? Could we host, a conference for the general community? I think there's been conferences that are, really kind of focused more on industry and not so much on, the community facing aspect of it. And I think we would have a lot of willing collaborators in the space of public outreach and education. We wouldn't be going it alone, but it does feel like a really big chunk to chew off, and we want to kind of carve out what our goals are there. And I think one idea that's been floated that could be interesting, it wouldn't be an immediate, an immediate project, but there's been talk of hosting like a physical wind education center. Something that people would come in and learn about, classrooms could go through. And it could be that if we get our building up and going, that could be something we could, think about for that space as well. That's a big if, but that's kind of on the super high end of the ask that people are wondering about. So that's kind of my thoughts around public education and outreach. Another thing that I think would be an opportunity for us is through central procurements. So the state has designated the Department of Water Resources to lead a central procurement process, basically centrally procuring or guaranteeing the purchase of a certain amount of the offshore wind to kind of give developers the green light that yes, there will be a market for this. And so there's a lot of decisions being made in the next couple of years about how that will look, can community benefits be added to that process. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to do advocacy around that. And really each of these points also, advocacy, but then also the outreach and education around each of these items as well. Along the lines of transmission planning, I think there's an estimated 4.2 billion needed to upgrade the transmission to accommodate wind. Not all of that comes, to just our direct area, but overall the transmission planning and build out. So I think there's gonna be a lot of opportunities to be involved and comment in that process. I think you kind of heard on, we're already doing this for other reasons. We have concerns over transmission, its effects on affordability. So it already kind of interconnects with everything we're working on and talking about. But I think specific to wind, we could do a lot of good to be really present in that space. The pilot project advocacy and development. This was one that was like a top favorite, I would say, of the community advisory committee. And this was really the first thing they brought up is, could we do something smaller scale that would set an example or be a demonstration project, something that, kind of would overcome the sort of federal chilling effects. I will say, I think you heard in Richard's presentation mentioning a project that we're involved with through CC Power, which is the Kadema Wind project. That would be a smaller scale. It's in state waters, so we're already working on that, but it's not off our coast. So there may be some room for advocacy around something happening more local here. I'm not sure where that could go, but we could certainly explore that. And then, of course, the broader discussion around community benefits. I think there's, a real nexus if we were able to negotiate some type of, reduced power purchase agreement, somehow, actually seeing the bill credit for our own customers, kind of being a frontline community. That's a real nexus. But also, again, from talking with others and specifically the CAC, they also had comments about just even advocating for broader community benefits. This could be something that, getting more involved with Core Hub. We have, participated in their meetings. As far as I know, I don't think we've made it a habit at all to sign on to their letters or add on a logo to the mix. We've just, been working with them and sharing resources, but not in a really leadership way. So that would be something we could explore around community benefits, or if we wanted to do something on our own. And another area that comes up is, supporting the Harbor District in building a zero emission port. And we definitely have a lot of stake in this, assuming that they'll be a customer. We have, load concerns and all kinds of, practical planning we need to do to make that work. But also just the advocacy around that and the importance of that and helping the community understand the importance of that. So those were top of mind for me. Like I said, as I kind of, did these listening sessions and collected my information, but I'd be happy to take feedback on all of those and then others. If you have other ways that you can ensure RC would be involved, that would be important to you, please let me know.
Okay. Questions, comments? I'm not here.
I know that Cal Poly Humboldt, Cal Poly San Luis, and Oregon State have the Pacific Offshore Wind Consortium. And I think that on some of the public outreach, that would be a good resource. Maybe even join public outreach.
I am interested in us being involved in this space. I think right at this moment in time, there's a lot of need for rallying around the development of the port. Resources are limited, and I think the Harbor District would appreciate that support to ensure that those investments are made in our port, which is the most, I think, strategically advantageous, like, geographic location. And in many ways, I think has some significant advantages. I would like to see us be part of that team more overtly. And then I think there's a really big question that the community has posed to me and to us and to many of us around what these projects down the line, whenever they are developed, which I think is it's a matter of time, will mean for the local. I mean, just looking at the wind research, just looking at the like facts of the map, like where does the wind blow hard? It's right there. So if we just think about that as, you know, a resource that will get tapped eventually, the question that people ask so frequently is, what will this mean for my power bills and our energy reliability? And if we can do a better job of answering those questions and getting creative about what possibilities there might be, and answer that with like, we can try to, you know, get kind of the community benefit, might be a guarantee of opportunity to procure energy from that, or to do complementary energy storage facilities or things like that. We're both exploring that and telling the community what that means. I think that's a real advantage and a place we can be innovative and agile and responsive to community needs. So I go to a lot of meetings and talk about what offshore wind in the broadest sense will look like or function like, what's currently being proposed. But so that level of public education outreach, like, I participate in and I see a lot of it, but I don't know that everybody in the community is receiving that information, because like you said, we're like breathing this weird air where we're, you know, just constantly. So those are the areas that are like top of mind for me right now, where we could really be a player. And I think I also agree with the pilot project development and being a creative and capable player in that space is really exciting.
Yeah, I like this list, and just to add, I think, you know, especially on that list, that transition planning is gonna really be very important, especially to this region, and to being able to work with that planning and, you know, hybridize it, get it into kind of those community benefits too, and see that reality of like, how are we supporting a project that is creating energy locally and sourcing that energy locally as well. Because I feel like when you have that kind of local energy chain that you can follow, you'll naturally start to get more of that community buy-in as well. And, you know, that partners perfectly with that idea of that public outreach and education. And just to add, you know, you mentioned like, yeah, a learning lab kind of idea. Because we've always talked about having that be part of like whatever building we would create and build. And I think that to, you know, not only include education around what RCEA generally does, but to be able to, you know, someday potentially have a building that can have a space exactly like that, that also explores, you know, the offshore wind world. And as somebody that's getting a little bit more involved on the K-12 education side of the offshore wind stuff too, and like working with HCOE on their like CTE programs and stuff, like there's a lot of opportunity to be able to partner with those educational partners to also you know, yeah, create like a real learning space and lab, and, you know, eventually maybe even training spaces as well, working with, you know, there's so many partners that are part of, you know, Core Hub and different advisory committees that can bring all of those things to the table. And so I think that's a really cool idea and something that RCA could be definitely, you know, a partner in.
CTE.
Yeah, sorry, I'm speaking educational,
No,
words too, just like all these guys. Yeah, career technical education.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
And one more thing to add, because Lori mentioned earlier too, the trip to Massachusetts and, I know there's probably quite a few people in this room that were on that trip, but that was like one of my favorite parts of that whole trip was going to the community college and like doing the hands-on stuff and seeing all of the different, you know, things that they had to teach, not only, you know, high schoolers maybe interested in pursuing trades, college students, but also like all the way down to educating, like they had a 4th grade program that they would, you know, operate and learn about, you know, how energy is generated and to like kind of see that integration. It's so cool. So that would be something to have here that I would love our CA to be a part of.
Can I just make one more comment about this? Obviously, there's a chilling effect right now, but I would make an enormous bet that this would happen in my lifetime, just because of the wind resource and the fact that energy needs ain't going down. And so I think it will happen eventually, regardless of our participation. So I want us to be like positioned on the like future looking edge of it, rather than like kind of behind the ball, and hearing about like some experiences in places in Europe where offshore wind is happening, like those who were kind of not like taking a real distant wait and see approach, like those communities didn't have as much of an advantage when this projects did come to fruition. So it just seems beneficial to assume that this is going to happen. And I've been hearing a lot of people say like, we just don't need to worry about it. I'm like, oh, this is a great time to think about it. It gives us some time, but not, you know, I wouldn't write it off. I think there's a lot of people who are writing it off. I don't think any of you in this room are.
Yeah, and I would just stress, you know, whatever we sort of could have here, it will always be done in collaboration. And there's a lot of great work that's already happening in this space. There's a wonderful, like, you know, frequently asked questions page that's a collaboration with Patriot Club and Epic and maybe others. So I think, you know, we don't, again, looking to not be redundant, but like where can we add and, you know, really add our expertise. For everybody talking, we have a ton of it. So I'm, you know, looking forward to making sure that we're not, you know, going it alone, but also like where we can be uniquely positioned or have that actually like in, you know, transmission planning and central procurement. Like we will be procuring power. Not everyone else in the community is in that situation. So I think there's certain areas where we really, you know, really absolutely front and center, and other areas where, you know, we'll be, you know, very much like not ever doing anything by ourselves. Everything will be a collaboration.
Yes. All right, did I go to the public? Okay, now's the time. Go to public comment. All right, so this was a received staff presentation, so thank you very much. Thank you, staff. Bring us up to staff reports, 10.1 executive report.
Okay, not tired of you yet. All right, so but actually this is a quick handoff for at least the first item. One thing we didn't cover during the policy platform was sort of that federal update that we were going to revisit every month. There actually hasn't been a whole lot of significant new activity. Sort of that first flurry of, you know, after the inauguration hit energy pretty hard. There was, you know, all those executive orders that we went through. And since that time, it seems, you know, right, like all those things are still influencing what's going on, but the administration's maybe attention is elsewhere with several other items. So, but I do want to turn it over to Eileen to give an update on the terrorist project. Again, that's our one, you know, major federal project that and then I'll make some announcements after that.
So The Trump administration requested DOE to do lists of projects that were funded under the Inflation Reduction Act, bipartisan infrastructure law. And what they're looking at is any project that's spent less than 45% of its appropriated amount or awarded fund. And so, you know, we've spent zero since we're just under conditional award. So we have been waiting for this list to get created of what their recommendations are. We don't have any updates on that at this time, but what we're just hearing is that they were expecting that list to be done by the end of this week. I don't think they're going to make it public. It then goes on for review by the OMB and I think DOGE. And then that becomes what gets approved. So we are hoping, so it was when we entered conditional award, we had 120 days to execute final agreement. So our deadline is coming up April 30th. We're hearing that they may be extending that another 120 days. So we're just still in a wait and see. But we did go as a group, representatives from Relay Rancheria, PIPA, UROC, SHOTS, myself went to the Tribal Energy Summit in Sacramento last week. And we used that opportunity to talk to as many state stakeholders, making sure everyone who had ears knows about the Terrace project. And we got that feedback that everybody now knows about the Terrace project. But what was really impactful was meeting with staff from CNRA, which is going to, so California Natural Resources Agency, which is going to be the administrator of the climate bond. So that's $4 billion. There is a carve out specific to tribal nations. And what we did learn is that the governor is going to be appropriating money from the climate bond in his proposed budget that should be coming out in May and June. So once that happens, there'll start to be programs that we can apply for through state funds. So really a goal of that was letting the state know that here's this project that is very worthwhile and under a little bit of risk due to federal decisions. And so I'm really proud of the team and you know, having plan A, plan B, and plan C and advocating for that. So more to come.
Any questions on that before I go through these?
We can't just hurry up and spend a bunch of money because we don't have the.
It's right now we're at a spend at your own risk.
Okay, so quick announcements, upcoming meetings. So this is our last meeting in the room of colors. So we have virtual anchor, we're making that change. So next meeting in April is actually, now this is important to pay attention to. This is the next meeting, and I'm sure Lori will keep you well informed, is at the Jefferson Community Center. And so that is going to be our study session on affordability. So we're also just trying to encourage, you know, public participation in that. We'll have a lot of great information to share about, you know, how to understand your bill, what goes into a bill, kind of all aspects of affordability. So, you know, if you have, you know, constituents that are asking those questions, it'll certainly be recorded as well, but happy to have folks join us at the Jefferson Community Center for that. We will have a consent agenda, and then everything else will just be that study session. And then beginning in May, we'll be here at the Warfinger, but upstairs. So that'll be kind of our new permanent-ish meeting area. And then work with the Community Advisory Committee. We have, you know, had 2 meetings since I've been here with them. And we will be kind of transitioning, you know, hoping in May that we'll really start focusing on, you know, their goals and vision, kind of get some of their work groups back up and going again. So we will, more to come on that, but hopefully you'll be hearing more about CAC activity soon. And then I will make it a habit to report on the call log because it's one of my favorite things. That, the RCEA made 119 phone calls in February. But we had a lot of inquiries related to net energy metering and the new solar billing ban. Our staff were pretty expertly able to address those. And this one's always my favorite statistic is how many people called to opt out. So we had 16 calls to opt out. And staff were able to, talk with all those folks and all but one stayed in RCEA customer. So I think this really just shows kind of the power of like sharing the actual information and how much work we need to do to get people to understand, their bill and our role. And then lastly, I wanted to mention 2 upcoming conferences that will be local or meetings. The California Air Resources Board is hosting a one-stop truck stop in Fortuna at the River Lodge. This is gonna have lots of information about like medium, heavy-duty vehicle, like for vehicle owners, fleet operators, even if you have a motor home or a storage truck, it looks like they have things like compliance assistance, incentive funding opportunity, and more. So that's at the River Lodge on the 18th of April from 9 to 1. And we'll have already send out more information about all this, but it's nice to come into town. And we'll have they're having a panel at that, and we'll have one of our staff will be presenting. And then Humboldt County will be hosting the Power California Conference. This is focused on building partnerships for ocean wind and energy renewables. This is at the Tishon Community Center at the Barrow Ridge area, and that's May 6th to 8th. I think it's maybe the third year now, third year of the conference is being held. And we'll have Richard presenting on a panel at that conference as well. So more to come on all of that. But yeah, just wanted to share that with you. And that's it for me, I promise.
That's right. Thank you. All right, item 11, future agenda items. Any requests that require board action will be set by the board for future agenda items for staff. So, does anybody have anything for next times?
I'd love to suggest that HTA come talk about the hydrogen stuff that's happening. It just a for a little cross pollination. That I'm open to you guys, right? The new hydrogen bus is here, by the way. It's secret. Secret hydrogen. So now's a good time to be talking about that cool project.
Thanks. Anybody else? Okay.
Sorry, HTA is from the transit.
Anybody from the public? No one online over here. All right, well, that was pretty good. It's 5:27, everybody, so.
Still got it, Sherry.
Yeah.